Good evening, everybody. I'm Kate Emmerson, and this is our call titled The Publishing Climate, What Publishers Are Looking For 21-22. And it's our way of loving all our writers from all over the world. So I'm Kate Emmerson. I am a best-selling author, an international speaker, a coach, and someone who's actually trying to work less and less at the moment. Sarah, over to you.
You may know me, you may have worked with me, but if you haven't, I'm Sarah Bullen, and I'm a book coach, a mentor, and a literary agent. So I've also been writing a little bit in lockdown, and I'll tell you about that. And I've also spent a lot of time speaking to publishers, because that's my job as a literary agent, speaking, finding out what they want, pitching books. I've been pitching, my lips are sore from pitching, and we're going to tell you all about that over the course of this sort of 30 minutes, and then we're going to have a lot of your questions.
I've been on the opposite end of the world. I have been working very little since April. I went on a very long personal retreat after being in lockdown with my mama bear in England. I went to a wee Scottish island called Iona, where I went offline, off-piste, off social media, and did a very deep, beautiful personal retreat time on my own. No work. It was one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur, actually, to not work. We think it's enticing and easy. It's really hard to break those kind of habits, because I've been a serial entrepreneur all my life. And I have not been writing. In fact, the only piece of writing I did was as I came out of my retreat, and I wrote a very long blog post. Sarah was saying, cut it up, this could be 6 articles. And for me, it needed to be a long post. And it almost took me as long as it did to write my last book in Malaga. But I am coming back into writing mode and back into the world a little bit. And I have been chatting to people and doing some research and reading articles and looking at trends. So we're going to try and put all of that in this call for you. And we've even put together some lovely slides for you, which Ms. Bullen is going to pull up. So we're going to disappear a little bit. So we have taken this seriously, and we've taken all your questions into account. It's why we were so fastidious about asking you to register, because we asked you then to pop us your questions. So we've tried to answer as many of them as possible in our talk. And at the end, we'll try and pull some other questions up. And of course, because you're here, you get to ask them live. So we'll just do as much of that as possible as we can. So Sarah, I'm going to hand back over to you. So we're just going to bounce between the two of us as a conversation. And we hope we keep you entertained and nice ideas. And over to you.
Okay, so what we're really chatting about at the beginning is the publishing climate. And we're going to go through what we've identified as the current P's of publishing. So I've written them up here, but we're going to really be just breaking each of them down as to what publishers are looking for and what the market right now is looking for. And we're going to be going through all of these, 11 of them, some of them in a little bit more depth and detail, and a little bit more examples that we've been working on. The first one we wanted to talk about is purchasing power. And this really comes down to something I always remind writers, and it's just a fundamental, is that readers buy books. And books are really there because people want to take something home, and it's a tactile experience. Look at those two gorgeous readers where they were actually standing there in London, in Piccadilly, and this is how people buy books. Not always, we're going to talk about that. It's a tactile experience. You're standing in front of a bookshelf. And publishers are always thinking, how do we get somebody to pick this book up? And booksellers are thinking, how can we put the books in a way that people want to grab them? So there we were, and this was February this year. So this was pre-COVID. We were standing in London outside Waterstone Books, and we really spent some time there just getting a feel on the pulse of what is happening in the booksellers and how they're positioning things and how they are presenting things.
And this was the most exciting shelf. It was massive. It was actually like ceiling to floor. And we stood in front of this, and it was just all these clever titles, and it was smart thinking, bold and brazen at the top. And then I think, Sarah, your next slide, just beautiful ways that they were laid out, and just different ways of examined lives. I mean, those of you writing memoirs, who doesn't want to be on the examined lives, or autobiographies, biographies, and just so just tactile as to how they want you to walk through and experience and pick things up. And, you know, and it's a little bit different now because a lot of you are doing that on Amazon, but it was just so beautiful to walk through this massive, I don't know, 6-story bookstore.
Mm. And that's why I always say, you know, when you are an author, when you're writing a book at the end of the day, you want published, in the back of your mind has got to be, who is my reader? Who is that avatar? Who's that individual who's actually going to pick up my book and buy it? And what is going to make them pick it up? And look at those covers, those things that are tagging at you and engaging you. So this is very, very important when you start to look at publishing trends, to understand the tactile nature of books and reading and how it all links in together. So this was February. And then, of course, many things changed and some things didn't change. But what we do know about publishers is that they are thinking ahead. And already this month, and actually the last 2 months, I've been speaking to publishers selling books, and they are looking for, most of the 2021 book lists are actually full. So we're talking 2022. And this is what Mali said to me, and I chatted to her yesterday, that they are thinking 6 to 12 months in advance. And people just want to know how to make the best of the circumstances they are in now. So we don't know actually what circumstances necessarily they are going to be in then. And we're talking 2022 and onwards. So unless you have a crystal ball, you've got to do what we call speculate or suggest or imagine where we could be, what we may need, what people may need to hear, and what people may want as a message.
Because part of that is how long it takes to get published. You know, if you're writing it, you don't write it in a couple of days. Well, some people we know write it, but then it can take up to a year to actually hit the shelves. So they're always working half a year to a year in advance. And especially in this ever-changing climate, I think that's even more prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and this one, I love this one. This is one of the books. It's just like, you know, booksellers are also personal. You go into different bookshops and you speak to different publishers. They have their own personal take on things, what books they like, what books they want to present to the public. So also just knowing as an author that when you start to get to the place where you're pitching and looking for publishers, they have their own unique little niche. And to understand that they're all looking for different things, as are booksellers, and how they present. We have intelligent, we have old bookshops, we have, you know, academic bookshops. It's such a big field, publishing. So we're going to cover quite a lot of it. Not to put novelists off, but it has been a damned hard year to release any books, but most specifically fiction. And we'll talk to you a little bit about why in a bit. So we are moving on to our second P of publishing, and this is really where it's getting exciting. Kate?
Yes. So when we talk about the pulse, so I just want to talk about this slide. So those of you who are in South Africa, or even outside of South Africa, because he is international, Douglas Kruger is a well-known speaker. He has won many awards for his speaking. He's got 75,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. And at the beginning of lockdown, Penguin commissioned him, and he pushed this book out in 2 weeks. And he was saying, what do people need to know to virus proof? And they got it out. They got it out as lockdown was happening. It was incredible. The South African publishing houses were very quick to pick up the beat over what was going on and how do they help readerships and entrepreneurs and the world think about it differently. There was also another one, Virus Proof Your Retirement, Lockdown Diaries. What's the one about the Karens, Sarah?
Yes, coming out now. It's called the Book of Karens. And those of you who know what Karens are, they're these middle-aged women who complain about everything. It's sort of a name for them. So one very quick author has brought out the Book of Karens. So those writers who can jump on the pulse of the feeling of what's going on right now and get a book out very fast, those books are snapped up.
And often, let's say historically, there might be something political that's going on. So often a writer or a biographer is on something, and as, for example, elections are released, or as someone is brought into power, they'll release that book within 24 hours. It's like sitting there waiting to go to the shelves. So it's just very fast, very fluid, very quick, very off the mark, very really like in everybody's face and at cutting edge, and always just ready to rock super, super fast. So not dropping a ball.
Yeah, and just look at these, all these authors who didn't have books about anything about what was going on, really moved on that. And, you know, often writers say to me, oh, there's a trend I want to write about and I'm feeling it. And, you know, they're books that you can take time with. And then they're books that you have to jump onto because somebody else is going to write it, and rather get in there first as an author if you have that inclination and that journalistic sort of feeling. Rachel Hollis, we're going to talk about her a little bit later, is one of the big Instagram blogging influencers, and that's another really powerful thing in the market. And look at these, you know, a Trump book, like really quickly get in there, bring out a Trump book just before the elections. So just some bigger trends on what are these fast moving and on the pulse books that publishers are looking for to slot into. And I just want to backtrack because publishers have a book list. Let's say they've already got 30 to 50 books they want to bring out in 2021. So I know Penguin have 50 on their list because I spoke to them this week. But things happen. Let's say if somebody's assassinated, quickly, if somebody jumps in, pitches a book, they will turn that book around in 2 or 3 months. So be on the alert for very, very exciting, topical, fast-moving things. What are these things? I've just highlighted some of them. These aren't all as fast as, you know, as a possible presidential election in America. Current affairs. Top-selling books are politics and current affairs. I will show you some of the Amazon bestseller lists, and topping the game is nonfiction, current affairs, and politics. Black Lives Matter, hashtag Me Too movements. Look on the right here. Me Too may have been a year ago, but the spin-offs and the post ones are coming out. You know, again, because we've had the shift in lifestyles. Home offices, working from home, homeschooling, home parenting, managing miserly teenagers, wrangling kids, I don't know, at home. You've
that one is like rather get to your oven and your kitchen and your fridge on one day and batch cook and freeze, and then you can look after snotty brats, you know, and not have to cook every night of the day, every day of the week. Celebrity, obviously, who's hot, who's an influencer, who's like right up there, who's in everybody's minds, who's people talking about, whether it's good or bad. Wealth, but maybe now it's like we said earlier, like virus-proof your retirement. People are thinking differently about their money right now. How much money do they need? What are they spending their money on? What's actually an expense versus, you know, a real need? Like people have had to rejig everything. Talk about trends. Someone like Susie Orman, who was a long-established author, has now come back out of retirement because of coronavirus. She had to respond to the market, and they begged her to come back and start sharing new wisdom that was current, because she started going against things that she'd said 20 years ago because they were no longer current, and she had to come back and be on point and on trend. And then obviously plant-based and vegan is a massive emerging trend. I mean, that is getting bigger and bigger. You know, it's becoming almost more mainstream now, and people drinking less and downtime and retreats, and there's just this new wave, minimalism, downsizing, tiny homes, being able to upcycle, recycle, because people have been stuck in their homes. So they're now looking at what they have got. Do they want it? How can they improve it? They're spending more time looking at their surroundings, looking at things and relationships differently.
Absolutely. And maybe you'll share later, Kate, the name of your new book. So what are the trends in novels? And let's remember we're in the X section of Pulse, fast-moving trends. The biggest fast-moving trend in novels is something called speculative fiction. I don't know how many of you know what that is. The second trend, I'm going to tell you what it is in 1 second, and maybe the picture on the right going to give you a little bit of a cue about that. But the other trend in novels is a rising trend of having LGBTIQ, transgender, you name it, characters openly as lead characters, as heroes in novels. So it's fantastically popular, and it is a huge trend in nonfiction. Speculative fiction, I just want to unpack for a second, is really, really taking off. In fact, when I spoke to UK, some publishers in Amsterdam and in America and in Canada, the thing that came top of their list of what hot authors are looking for, hot publishers are speculative fiction. And what is it? It's actually quite a big genre that encompasses what we call fantasy, sci-fi, horror. And we really call them just astonishing tales. There's a big section called African speculative fiction, which publishers are actively seeking commission and commissioning. So be aware, if you're writing a novel, look for the trends. What are people buying? Don't be writing a Western. Don't be writing a cowboy novel. Looking at where the future market is moving towards. And then there are the fails in terms of being on the pulse. And an agent actually shared this on Facebook, and it's really about getting the trend wrong. Kissing the coronavirus. Okay, let's see how many ratings. 2 stars on Amazon and 331
ratings.
No, I'd hate to read those reviews. A romance, a steamy tale about forbidden love. Oh, the time of that. Trend number 3.
So provocative. It's like, look at that beautiful cover. How to be a boss. Like, you've even just got to say it with sassy attitude. And many of you know the subtle art of not giving a fuck. I mean, Mark Manson is one of the first that started putting that in his title, and it's now become somewhat of a given. It's not so much cutting edge anymore, but just provocative is about being sassy and about cheeky and about attitude and about owning it and about really being quite opinionated about many things, whether it is your sex life or your business life or how you got to the top or whatever it is, like how to sleep more or how to dream bigger, but just being quite a force of nature, force de rigueur, like just in people's faces. And especially in this day and age, it's a lot easier to do that because of social media, because of how fast it is to access people and to follow them and look at influencers or non-influencers. And Sarah, do you want to say more about the Netflix generation?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we are, and we're going to start talking about that a little bit, our reading habits have been influenced hugely by current media we consume. So we are looking at now the younger readers coming in. So I'm not talking about the 30 plus readers who are established and big reading market. Younger readers are coming in are the Netflix generation, the porn generation, the gaming generation. Horror, I see you say, but not really. So what does that mean? It means books are sexier. They're more graphic. If you go through the genre romances, the steaminess and the levels of bondage, BDSM, I mean, E.L. James is tame now to where the level of mainstreaming of sexuality has gone. So as an author, what does that mean? It means you've got to push your own boundaries. You've got to actually get sexier, more attitude, more tone, more, as Kate said, and I love that word, in your face, when you write a new book and you start pitching those books. Yeah.
And remember, it doesn't mean that you are that, but you could be writing that, unless you are writing a memoir and you are telling your tale, you are writing the book of it. So that's tone of voice. What is the tone that you are adapting? Now, this for me, I'm always hell-bent on productivity. This is amazing. Look how much time most of us are wasting, 5 hours on an average, I'm going to say universal day. So just streaming and watching and screen time and just being totally absorbed by this fast moving data in front of us, staring at the laptop or the huge screen TV or even on your mobile phone. But that is a lot of time that people are spent immersed in this kind of generation, the gaming generation, the Netflix, the hard hitting stuff. And we're not saying that's all there is. There's other trends, but this is just one of the big things that we cannot ignore is this kind of media and the way that it is going.
Yeah, and as an author, to know you are competing for those little hours left. So on number 5 or 4 of our keys, and Kate, really, this one speaks to you, I think.
Yeah, so yesterday I was speaking to Astrid, who's the owner of Ulva Publishing, which is a very well-known publishing house in Germany. They are very niched, so they are lesbian fiction, non-fiction, huge in the romance genre. And we had a long 45-minute chat yesterday. And when I said to her, Astrid, what do you say are the trends? And I'm going to, 3 words, uplifting, happy escapism. We want things to make us feel good. And she said, that's not just in romance. She said, I'm not just talking about my publishing house. I've been going, I've been looking at what's happening in the world. And she's just saying we need things that help us escape and feel good. And she even went on to say, like, cozy mystery, maybe versus hardcore thriller, and less dystopian, less conflict. So just leaning towards, we need hope. We need to know that we can get hugs through books. Like, that's the way I feel. We need to know that we can escape, that we can actually drift off into that other world. I started yesterday a lovely romance, a wedding at the beach hut. There it is. Lovely little hut with a wedding dress. I know why. I'm going off into La La Land, down to the beach to put my feet in that sand, and it's delicious. And poetry is such an interesting one, because poetry was like on the decrease and then on the increase in the last decade. And then I don't know if you've been following, but obviously in the last week, we have had Louise Gluck, who's been awarded the Nobel for Literature, a poet. And what Astrid was saying yesterday is that what's been interesting is that some of her first books were out of print and not in ebooks, and they've had to scramble to start getting them out. But the other interesting thing for me about poetry is, I don't know how many of you watch America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. For me, those are escapism kind of things to watch, because they're about people following their dreams. Well, this year on America's Got Talent, Brandon Leake, the most beautiful young father, a spoken poet, won. He took first place, a spoken poet. I mean, he was the first spoken poet on the show ever in the history of, I think, 15 or 16 seasons. And he won. So just anything that's going to bring us back to some warmth and some hope and some inspiration is massive. And that is going to be on the upward for the next couple of years. Absolutely, without a doubt. I can even feel like it's quite soothing, even just thinking about it.
Absolutely. And the big word there is also solutions. People want solutions. Back to what the publisher was asking for. They want to know that there is a way to navigate the future. And you as author have to give them, look at this book, How to Live a Simple, Serene and Stress-Free Life. Solution, problem solved, guys. Just read that book. And it will be the roadmap to live life.
Non-fiction writers. Okay, our next one, number 5. Look at that. Predictable.
Sarah's favorite conversation with writers. Readers want a book that delivers what they like. All right. And when you're a novelist and you're writing a romance, I mean, these are all Nicholas Sparks novels, right? Okay, this is a funny meme because they all just look the same. He's just released a new novel. I don't actually have the name. It's lower and it's on the top bestseller list. It's been there for like 14 weeks. New York Times bestseller. Predictable. When we buy a romance, we know how we want to feel. So as an author, it's so critically important that you understand, and I've said to you, that you can deliver on genre. You can deliver what a reader wants. And I've just put a romance here, but the same goes for your crime and your crime authors. And that's why people and publishers, and this is the thing that singularly came back to me the most with my pitching, is they want trusted names and big name authors. Why? Because sales are predictable. Readers know that they will deliver what they've promised, and it makes a really fantastic business model. It's, of course, difficult when you're an unpublished author. But just to know that that's the consistency, and to understand that you have to deliver and understand genre, and publishers know it, and readers know it, and that's where the publishing model is going, and it's going to a place of precision.
As I on that last slide, because I know you're going to go off on a tangent here. What I just wanted to say is that knowing that they want big names and that predictability and that trustability is that when you are then obviously pitching in your query letter and your whole pitch deck, it's like you're also looking at your comp titles. So what are your competitive titles? You're looking at, this is in the genre of, this is in the steps of, this is similar to. So like they know that you are emulating, you're using those tropes within that genre. They know that you know what you're talking about because they know that you understand genre. And then they're like, okay, we could look at this author, because agents. There are hungry agents out there. There are always people looking for debut authors. So it's not just the tried and trusted. It's also those of you who are doing your first one, because sometimes I had written something down. It's easier actually to start off a new author than to try and rehash an older one that isn't working. So there is also, you've got to be on genre, on point. Okay, off you rattle for precision. I love this one.
No, and it just moves us closer and closer to the fact that the publishing sales business is becoming driven by genre, tightness, focus. And this is a screenshot from Netflix. And I want you to all notice, if you watch Netflix, how smart they are with their positioning, that every movie that comes up, a little trailer, it has 3 words that describe it. It can be like black comedy, sexy, graphic, or it can be love story, quirky, woman's interest. Okay, so as a writer, imagine writing those scripts. As an author of the book, you've got to be as precise in what you are delivering. And I always relate it to a promise you make to your author. So precision in being an author is matching all of these elements. And some of these may be very scary words. Amazon keywords, what is she talking about? All right, so important, because that is how books are sold online and digitally. They are sold on Amazon. That's where they're sold. Okay, we've got our other little platforms and devices, but they all feed through a similar system and similar algorithms.
But I just want to add something here. Wait, Sarah, before you go on. Is that when you go, for example, to Amazon, or you walk into a bookshelf, you're going to first look maybe at what is your genre. So you're standing under smart thinking. Next, you're going to look at the cover. That's got to match the genre you're standing underneath. Then if the cover grabs you, you're going to go and look at the title, then the subtitle, then you're going to turn it over in the description. And you do exactly the same on Amazon. So you'll look at the cover, maybe I'll look at the title. And then the description is going to be the part that sets it apart, that goes, yes, I'll put my money and I'll buy this book and I'll take the time to download it. So all of those things have to homogenize together in perfect unison. And if one kind of is disjointed, it isn't going to work. It's going to throw everything off, or they're not going to know that that's what that book's about. So that's one of the arts, is matching all of those things together.
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a behind the scenes. This is when you load a book onto Amazon, and this is the back end of the publishing, the Kindle Direct publishing platform. The very first thing you have to make, and some of the people on my current mentorship will know, I shared this story the other night. The very first thing you have to load is you start to choose what is your book. Okay, we're going to drill down a little bit deeper. I was sitting with an author, and he was a psychic medium, international, and he had written a book, which I understood was about his experiences of being a psychic medium. And we sat down and we were doing an online call and we were loading his book. And I said to him, and I clicked on, there we go, first decision. And I clicked on non-fiction, because this is obviously a factual book about his experiences. And he said, no, it's fiction. Now, I said to him, well, is it true or not true? And he said, it's made up, a lot of it, and some of it's true. And that's when I'm going to stop the conversation as an agent or publisher. And I'm going to say, that's not possible. All right, it doesn't work. There are only 2 promises you make an author. This is true, in which case it's a nonfiction, or this is a work of fantasy, in which case you've written a fiction or a novel or a children's book or whatever it may be. So please start to understand that. You have to know what you're writing, because genre just drives every decision you make as an author. It drives every conversation you're going to have with an agent or publisher. It drives every way a reader will consume your book. It has become the way, unfortunately or fortunately, books are bought, written, and sold. So when you load your book, and let's assume you can get up into this is a nonfiction. I also showed this to my mentorship the other night. Let's assume you've written a spiritual book or a life coaching book. You then start to have very, very distinct choices. And in Amazon, you can only choose 2. Where will your book be sold? In a bookshop, you have one choice. You're going to be put in the Christian bookshelf, or you're going to be put in the New Age spirituality shelf, or they're going to put you in the self-help spiritual on that shelf. But on Amazon, you are really given a little bit of a leeway, and you are So I'm just going to show you back one slide. That's Kate and my book, because you're on the back end of my publishing platform, where we've listed our book, which is called Write Your Book in 100 Days. So we've chosen two very different ways people can find us. One is nonfiction, language and arts publishing, and the other is education, reference, writing skills. Interesting, because there are such different ways that people would find, search, or access our book. Novels is just as niched and tight. I mean, the second you're writing any novel, we're going to start drilling down and down. This is Amazon loading. What is it? What exactly is the book you're writing? Okay, yes, it's a thriller. So you're going to drill low down and down until we're very specific about what the book is. And then we have this wonderful thing that really determines the 7 words that make people buy our book or find our book. And this is where you have your Amazon keywords. And this is becoming one of the most powerful mechanisms how books are bought and sold.
Because Amazon is a pay-for-play platform, which means that they give books that are advertising and spending money and doing that, doing ads, that they give them heightened coverage, and you'll see sponsored links. I think you've got a wish list slide next week.
Yeah, I'm going to show you this, but this is as an author, when you're loading your book, this is our book, this is what I'm loading, let's say on Amazon, I have to choose the keywords that people will buy my book with. So I've had a few there. Am I going the wrong way on this? I have. And those are, what we've put, and you're going to go in and change and adjust if people aren't finding your book. So we're talking, guys, about an AI-run system of book sales, artificial intelligence, and one step further, not only they are going to then recommend, and that's how people start buying books. Oh, you liked, I can see you, okay, you can all see, this is my wish, this is my recommendations. So you can see I'm a crime reader. I love a little crime, both of these. And then I also love a little noir, Scandinavian intelligent crime novel. Okay, you can see
no porn there, hey?
Kate.
I just listened to an interview with Lee Child. I put it on our author support group a couple of weeks ago, and I signed up and listened to him a couple of nights ago. A fantastic hour-long interview, just him one-on-one being interviewed, and we were all on a Zoom web. And it was just fascinating. His next book is coming out in end of October. And this one is now co-written with his brother, because he is letting go of this character in the series, and his brother is going to be taking over. So I think the whole world is watching this and wondering how that's going to be. And he was just describing that process. It was fascinating about him.
Okay. So I think we must move on. We've got keep an eye on the time. So guys, I just want to say this, as much as we're talking about trends and what's hot and what's on the pulse, at the end of the day, publishing is a very old business. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And actually, what most publishers want are books that sell and sell and sell and sell. And those are the perennials. Those are the books that are timeless, that can sit on the shelf. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 20 years. What did we have that stat earlier? 35 million copies sold. 20 years as a, so as much as we've got the John Sarneys and we've got the Douglas Krugers, Virus Proof Your Money, these are the books that will be on the shelf 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the Simon Sinek's, and that kind of, sorry, I was just, so what are the perennials? These books they're always looking for. How to make money, keep money, improve your money, manage your money, whatever it may be. Cookbooks, Christian books, books of faith, very, very, very high turnover books. Health and wellness. Publishers are always looking for history books, modern history, ancient history, anything that records civilization or an era or the zeitgeist of an era are very sellable to publishers. We often think we want to write about ourselves. We want to write our memoirs. But a lot of times what is a more publishable book is one of these, a book that presents history, a person, a biography, and always sold on leadership and business books. They have a high turnover. Business leaders are known to read a lot. And that's in our nonfiction
what I want to say
side.
about leadership books is that although it's on perennial list, of course it could also go onto the, the pulse list, because when things are changing, like how are leaders now coping in the time of COVID, for example, how are they leading their teams on Zoom? I have a friend who took up a huge directorship position in Dubai and got to Dubai as lockdown happened and had to move into a new region and into a new team from his hotel room and didn't leave it for 8 weeks, but he had to manage something brand new. Like, that was cutting edge. I mean, it was incredible. There he was from one room in a hotel in a foreign country.
So just quickly to take you through this slide, and this is really just the most recent list of Amazon bestsellers in the hard copy. So not digital downloads. These are books that people get in their hands, either from a warehouse, from a bookstore, or print on demand. And just take a look at how physical book sales differ from digital, because these are visual books. These are cookbooks. Including children's books. Children's books aren't sold very well digitally, apart from the middle grade and upwards books. So these are tangible. You want them in your hand. You want them in your kitchen. And those are perennials. What always sells in fiction? Guys, it is as predictable as the Monday morning. Crime, romance, thrillers are rising ones, are new adult, young adult, and middle grade fiction and children's books. And remember, I spoke about perennial fiction. It's a rising trend, but it's not a perennial. It's not those books that will sell again and again and again and again. Top 3 bestsellers in Amazon in the last few weeks. Number 1, Stephanie Meyer. Number 2 is a new release. First week on the list, Battleground, which is probably a speculative fiction, and I don't know it, but he's a best-selling author, so it's not his first book. And number 3 is Harry Potter. And now I want to freak your mind. I want to show you the entire 10 bestseller lists of Amazon. So this is print and digital sales. I want you to cast your eye down this thing. And I want to show you that there is a J.K. Rowling Harry Potter. Number 4 is J.K. Rowling Harry Potter. Number 5 is Harry Potter. Number 8 is, who is that? Robert Galbraith, pseudonym of J.K. Rowling. Number 9 is Harry Potter, 178 weeks. And I'm sure it's been more, but it's just had a resurgence. They probably re-released it on. And Harry Potter is number 10. Perennial books, books that are going to sit there forever. Enid Blyton's. Publishers love those. Timeless classics.
Sarah, it's 22. Pivot. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. We've put this word in because it became a very irritating word over lockdown, where everyone was talking about, are you pivoting your business? Are you pivoting your family? Are you pivoting your cooking? Pivot, pivot. And I always laugh because I'm a Friends fan, and I always remember that lovely scene with Ross where he's trying to pivot his couch up the stairs. So if any of you know that, you'll be chuckling with me. But one of the things is looking at what are the trends that are happening with books. So, so many of us still want the paper, the touch and feel, the tangibility, the having something wonderful in our paws so that we can read. But there are also trends. So as ebooks started taking off, there is always a natural trend as something gains traction. So ebooks started really climbing in terms of readership. Then they started falling off a little, and audiobooks started climbing the ranks because there's something interesting happening. People are either multitasking, so they are wanting to listen to an audiobook while they are jogging or running or on their trampoline at home or homeschooling the kids and listening to something, or they are on their smartphone, so that the number of smartphones is increasing exponentially. So everybody has got a smartphone in their pocket, which means they've got music and they've got audiobooks, or they are reading in more bite size, so smaller chunks of material, easier to read copy, not necessarily such long novels, but maybe something shorter and sharper and sexier because it's on their smartphone. And the other thing also with audio is people are getting screen fatigued. I mean, you know this in general. You know this, say, from the last 6 to 8 months in terms of lockdown, spending more time on Zoom. At the end of the day, people cannot do any more screen time, but they can still do maybe audio, or they can do books. So the other thing is omni-channels is when you are thinking about writing, you're no longer just thinking about, oh, I'm writing a book. You also have to think about, how is it going to be published? Is it going to be published paperback, hardback, ebook, audiobook. Maybe down the line, will someone actually cotton on and turn it into a series for Netflix? So always thinking omni-channels, omni-distribution. That's how publishers are thinking. They don't necessarily want someone who's just thinking about one book. They might be wanting someone who's thinking about a series of books, but you can't have the series until you've got your first one. So what happens, we notice with authors, is they've written number one, they haven't published, I'll write number two. Haven't published, I'll write number three, because it gets very addictive to write. But actually you've got to think about putting it out there in all the channels and then moving to the next one. So what is number 9, Sarah, about perfect?
Your favorite word, and I've put a quote here from such an interesting and important commentator on the industry. Done. And this really is, done is better than perfect. And I can't tell you, Kate came up with this and she says it all the time. And it is one of the biggest truisms of writing. Kate.
You know, we have this ill-fitting thing in our head that it's got to be perfect. It's got to be, no, there can never be an extra spacing or a comma in the wrong place, or everything has got to be 100% perfect. And I remember when I arrived in Cape Town and we saw our book, and I remember bursting out laughing, going, what the hell's wrong with the cover color of us? We look like we've been on a sunbed for 10 weeks. But the thing is no one is ever going to read your book. And if you are wanting it to be perfect, we're not saying, like, we're going to talk about what is good enough, but it's always about a little bit of luck and a little bit of timing. So it is the right pitch to the right agent or publisher at the right time. And all those things synergize. And yes, there are some lucky writers who their very first pitch they send off, they might get picked up. But that's not common. It's not the norm. So you've got to have that point where you go, you know what? Okay, done is better than perfect. And you've just got to go, I've reached this point. I can move on from this point. I can let myself move on from first draft. I can put that full stop. I can let this be my best query letter for now. I can send it off, because you will never get to hold your book in your hands. Like that's one of our authors, Denise, on the left with her beautiful cookbook, and Costa Carastafrakis. And it's just, if you want that delight of holding it and changing people's lives, but most importantly your own, you have to be able to know when to let go.
And just to quickly add in there is that publishers, it's about sending it out. And if they see it and if they like it, they will work with you. So we have a young author, I don't know if she's on the call, Aprajita. She's a wonderful 19-year-old Indian girl who's just got a scholarship in London. And she wrote a novel. And she was like a firecracker. She sent it out to about 40, 50, 60 publishers. And they came back to her. They wanted a rewrite. Then she started honing in and working with 2 or 3 of them. She has 6 publishers waiting for her novel, and they have worked with her. She's on her 4th rewrite, where they've worked incredibly constructively with her about the timelines, because it's about 7 lives, about a couple who play out the 7 lives of a romance. And they've tightened the storyline with her. They've tightened the characters. They've moved away from controversial stuff. And they said to her, now we want 6 months. We don't want to see it for another 6 months. We want this book perfected. So if she had made it perfect or thought it was perfect, she would never have got it out there. They wouldn't have started working with her. And the same with nonfiction. They may love your concept, but you got it all wrong. They want to cut this, move that. So it's not going to be perfect. And the publisher is going to take it to the next level. So it's about the finishing and sending. Are we ready to move on to the second last?
I was going to say, you're never going to get it to the publisher if you hold on to it for too long, because you might go around perfecting those first 3 chapters for 10 years, because that's what happened. So yes, let's talk about polished. So Sarah, do you want to talk about what makes a book good enough to say?
It doesn't have to be perfect, but my God, it's got to be polished. And the number of submissions as an agent I get, and I look at them and I think, come on now. This is your first version. This is your second version. This is your third version. Like, you haven't, what does it have to be? It's got to be, you have got to work this book. You've got to have, back to the precision, it's got to be congruent. We need to, you've got to have a really good manuscript, as good as you can get it. It's got to have been edited. It's got to have been reworked. I said in my latest newsletter, when I do a book, because I ghostwrite for celebrities and for whoever, I do 7 drafts of a book. Okay, the first is average, the second, by the third it's an assembly, the fourth I'm starting to get tone, by the fifth I'm really starting to get something exciting going, and on I go. So if that's what it takes me as a professional writer, don't send me your book until you've done at least 5 rewrites. And again, and I think Annie's on this call, and Annie's been in a similar situation. Annie sat with that book and thought it's good enough, and then she's worked more, and she's realized it's not the book she wanted. She's worked the book. You've got to work your book. It takes time, guys. It takes a long time. I think Annie's been writing for over a year. Yeah. And then your pitch, which Kate can speak.
So the pitch is literally what you're either going to send off to a publisher or an agent. So for example, in South Africa, you can approach publishers directly, but in most countries, you have to go to a publisher via an agent. And your agent is the person that is on your team. They'll look out for you. Agents are always looking for great authors. They're hungry to find the next author, the next big deal, the next up-and-coming writer. And they will obviously do all of the pitching on your behalf. They will have contacts in the industry. But one of the things about polishing your pitch is there's kind of 3 key things. Is you've got to go and find, let's say, the agent or the publisher. You've got to go and find them that are very genre specific. So when you are going and hunting, you're not going to go and pitch a thriller when you know that they are predominantly romance genre agents or publishers, because that's just going to annoy the heck out of them and you're not going to get anywhere. So they have to be working in your genre, first of all. Nextly, they have to be open for submission. That's what Astrid was saying yesterday. It was fascinating. She said, I cannot tell you how many people, when they send us a submission and we say, don't send us another one for 6 months, and 4 months later, they send a submission. And she says, I just don't want to work with that author. They can't even listen to one instruction about what we need. I don't want to spend a year working with that author because they're already off-piste, and I don't want to have to rein them in if they can't even do the first simple thing. So when you're pitching, you're also going to get weeded out very quickly or land up on the slush pile. So know that they are open for submissions, which is why it's also really important to track who you are submitting to and when they said they'd get back to you, because you don't want to go back to them and say, go and hack them or resubmit if you've already submitted, even if they're open for submission. So you've got to watch who you're sending to and when. And then the third thing is you've got to look at, are they actually someone that you would like to work with? It's almost like going for a job interview. So your query letter and your pitch deck is actually like a job interview. So you want it to be polished and professional. You don't want to look like naive, even if it is your first book. If they're asking for 300 words in your query letter, make sure you give them 300 words. Don't give them 500. If they ask for the first chapter in the body of the email, don't put it as an attachment. And it sounds like such simple things, but it is one of the first ways that they will cut you. And I was listening to some agents and some publishers, listening to some podcasts. And in America, one of the things is they will often be on their smartphone. And as they get to a stop street, they'll see how many pitch and query letters can I look at while the robot's red, the traffic light's red. Yes, no, 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 no. And you've got almost 30 seconds. So you want to be polished, professional, and on point, and don't mess that up. But again, you don't want it to wait to be too perfect. You've got to think, when is the right time to send this off? Oh, Sarah, we've got to keep moving.
We've got to quick, and we're going to finish up our last 2 quick comments, and we're going to wrap through this, because really it is all just about, why are you writing the book, and can you speak about it, and are you real, especially with non-fictions, and can you really sit there and live and be this book? Right, and that's one of our authors, Gabby Lowe. Many of you actually know she came to Greece with us, and loads of you are on the call with her in Greece.
And it's really about, who are you, what do you stand for, and do you have a following? So you don't have to have millions of followers, but you need to have some kind of like standing in your community, in your business, in your expertise. You've got to have people that are looking to you. And even if you are a novelist, like, if you have a favorite author, you go and follow them, and you go and look at them on Instagram, and you go and watch what they're doing with their pet iguana or dog. So it's just about showing up in the world, and you've got to be able to show that to a potential agent or publisher, that you know what you're doing, that you are prepared to put yourself out there. You can't be looking for a publishing contract, but you're hiding off, the west coast of Scotland. You've got to be willing to be out there.
And it's not about having 10,000, 20,000 followers like the Hay House submissions. The recent book, actually, I'm the agent, Megan de Beyer, it's a parenting book. They printed 1,000 copies on her first print run. So that's also sometimes enough. It's enough of a following to have a published book in the market. You don't have to have your 150,000 followers.
Yeah, in South Africa, I know from my publisher, they'll say often 500 is the break-even point. And that's the expectation. And if you can do that, it's a solid book. It means all the money's come back. Yeah. So I think sometimes we tend to overthink it. Right. Persistence. This is where so many people give up. Send it out to one publisher, maybe two. Jack Canfield, you all know the, obviously his success principles, you might not know, but the Chicken Soup for the Soul, that billionaire empire now. He was 144 publishers that rejected him and that concept, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Okay, it has now got multiple chicken soup for animals, chicken soup for your mothers, chicken soup for cats. I mean, it's just crazy how it's mushroomed, 144 rejections. So you've just always got to be persistent. Set time aside every single week to research. I was doing research this week. There are many, many, many agents, Sarah's flicking through now, that are looking for authors, but you've got to research them. You've got to put in the time. You've got to send them off. You've got to have your goal of how are you going to get that? You've got to keep at it week after week. You've got to keep bringing yourself back to your writing, bringing yourself back to your blogging, bringing yourself back to your building your brand, putting it out there, doing another rewrite. It doesn't just happen first time. Okay, that's naive. That's such a beautiful quote.
Yeah. We just wanted to end our piece with that. And the word really is just patience. This is a really long journey to be an author. There are those quick ones, there's those ones that go to market fast, but most of us who write because it's an action, it's what we want to do, it's a calling, and it takes time. And it's about allowing that, particularly with a novel, like let it mature. And I can't say that enough. Let it play out until it's ready. Yeah.
I'm looking at the time. It's 5:02, and we promised 40 minutes and 20 minutes.
Now we're doing questions.
Take off your screen share. So no, we have answered because we looked at your questions. So we know a lot of them have been answered in some form just by what we've already shared. Sarah, what is just... I've got an interesting question here from Anne-Marie. A book is set between SA and Japan. Is it best to target SA publishers, or could she go UK and US?
Definitely international. You know, local publishers are small. South Africa, there are like 4 of them, and you can go straight to them if they're open. But it's, you know, books can be timeless, and I'm sure the concepts are universal. So go for the international and the local. There is no, it's like Tinder, okay? You don't have to be monogamous. You can date everybody, or at least chat to everybody.
But only marry one when it's a publisher. Is it worth paying for an appraisal before approaching a publisher? And while I'm doing this, so what we're going to do is at the hour, sorry, we're going to stop the recording because otherwise it gets too long, but we're going to stay on the call. But we want to just like close off the recording bit because that's better to send to people, but we will stay on, okay? So because you've come live, we want to answer as many questions as possible.
I cannot recommend a manuscript appraisal highly enough. In fact, many international agents will not take your book on or look at it unless you've had a professional manuscript appraisal. Time and time again, we have organized, because one of our services organized hooking writers up with the manuscript appraisals, and you cannot believe how it's going to kick your book to the next level. And even more than that, I often recommend you take your query letter, you take your proposal and get a copywriter to help you with it. Because that is the single thing that is that professionalism. That's Kate and I did that. On the back cover of our book, Write Your Book in 100 Days, we'd said the same things. She said, let's get a copywriter to look at it. And they changed the way we said it. And it was so much better. We've just organized loads of manuscript appraisals for novelists, for nonfiction writers. They are hard to read. They're always going to point out what's wrong, but they're always going to make your book better.
Well, I think the interesting for me is if you get a publishing contract, you're going to get an editor that will work on your book as part of your publishing contract, right? But when you get a manuscript appraisal, you are being taught to be a better writer. So you are improving your skill, which means next book, next round, you've got that under your belt better because they're going to tell you how to improve your POV or your character or your argument or your big idea or your 10 lessons if it's nonfiction. And you get to understand that and integrate it and then go back and do a rewrite. So often people will say, well, shouldn't I just pay for it to be edited? Well, yes, you can, but you don't learn. So it's a slightly different concept. And a manuscript appraisal is not a beta reader. Often a beta reader is someone different. That is just eyes.
I'm going to answer the question that Henry asked shortly, but I just want to say before we stop our recording that we are inviting all of you to join us in November on a madcap writing adventure. We are committing ourselves to finishing a book in November. I have a celebrity memoir that I have to deliver by the 28th of November, which happens to be my birthday. And Kate is writing a book she'll tell you about. And we have opened up a 1-month Blast Your Book group. We will send you the link or drop the link or do something with the link. I don't know. And you can sign up and you can join us. It's a paid group. I can't remember what it is, Kate. I think it's $70.
Yeah.
And you can get, we're going to push you and nudge you and force you. And we've had a lot of people sign up already. And it's actually just going to be a lot of fun. So if you need that extra push, what are you going to be doing on it, Kate? I know you were committing to something.
So last year, there's some of my friends from Malaga here, I wrote my 5th book in Malaga, literally in 11 writing sessions. Then I pulled in 12 interviews. And on our writing group in lockdown, I'd kind of put it all together. And since April, I've done sweet fanny nothing with it. And I need to finish that book before the end of this year and publish it. So I'm committing to editing and doing everything to get it published and up by the end of November. So we are putting ourselves on the line and we are asking you to come with us because we know that you've got to do that next bit. We know how many of you are spending 5 of your hours on HBO or Netflix. And we're saying, imagine if you take that time and you tweak it and you pivot it to your writing, because this has been a funny old year. And the question is like, what do you want to finish this year? What do you want to say, God, no matter what, I did actually do that chunk of my writing. I took another step towards my dream. I did my whole rewrite, or I did my 50 publishers, or I got it self-published and up and out. And like, that's what I want for everybody, like some level of pride in your writing of what you have finished, not what you've thought about, not what you've wondered about, not what you've dreamt about. No. What you've finished. So we call it Stop Mucking About. We're all going to be blasting our books and we'll send you that tomorrow. But I do just want to say thank you to everybody. We have hit our hour, so we're going to stop this recording and then we're going to stay on. Okay, so let me just do that. Good night, everybody.
While you're doing that,